rush up the city, they run on the wall. Great is the army that carries out his word. They rush on the city, they run on the wall. Great is the army that carries out his word. The Lord utters his voice before his army. The Lord utters his voice before his army. Blow a trumpet in Zion, Zion. Sound the alarm on my holy mountain. Blow a trumpet in Zion, Zion. Sound the alarm. Blow a trumpet in Zion, Zion.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the Deception Watch program. I'm your host, Brian Delory, and I thank you all for tuning into the program this afternoon. And on today's program, I'm going to be presenting a message entitled, The Case Against William Branham. Now, most of anyone who's listening to the program knows who William Branham is, and simply put, William Branham was just another one of the many ministers that came to prominence during the healing revivals of the 40s and 50s. Now, he was known before that. He actually, as a young man, apparently gave his life to the Lord after an accident he had while working for a particular company. But he had, even as a child, claimed that God had spoken to him, or an angel, to be exact. Wasn't necessarily the voice of God, but an angel spoke to him and of his calling and the things he was going to do in his ministry. So that's where it all started, and then it just grew from there. But really, William didn't come to prominence to the level he is today until those revival meetings started. And you know, as with all of these evangelists, there's always some sort of sensationalism associated with their ministry. God called me. I saw an angel. I saw God. Whatever it has to be. And as the saying goes, sensationalism sells. And so people gravitate to those types of preachers because somehow they feel that they're above them or more highly anointed than anyone else. And that's really not the truth. Every one of us, myself included, has been called to preach. Every Christian has that calling on them. Now, we all have different callings. We're called to preach. That's the same calling, but the method we employ may be a little bit different than others. For example, some people are called to preach. They're more highly used in the gifts of the Spirit, particularly the power gifts of the Spirit. Others are called, but they're more highly used in the gift of teaching, like I am. And I can sit here and tell you that, and of course it's purely anecdotal. You weren't there. I don't have any recordings of it. I don't have any documentation of it. But I was called to preach when I first accepted Christ and started going to a particular church. And within a 4-year period, 4 separate times, I was told by 4 separate evangelists, none of whom knew each other, so there could be no collusion. And I was called out and told by each of them that I had been called to preach. Now, some of them added some information to that as it went on, but the calling was the same. I'm called to preach. One told me I was called to preach, teach, and heal the sick. Well, I've preached and I've taught. Healing the sick has been another issue, at least for the time being. So that's what happened. I didn't hear a voice. I didn't see a light. I didn't see a vision. I didn't see God. I didn't see Jesus. I wasn't caught up to the third heaven or anything like that. But these men ministered that to me, and I forget where it is. I believe it's in Timothy, where Paul said that it is Timothy, by the way. I just don't remember which book. That he was, the gift was placed in him by the laying on of hands of the presbytery, and it's similar to me. And that could probably apply to millions of other ministers of the gospel. Are we any different than anyone else? No. We still need Christ. Christ will operate through us as we allow him to, but it's all God. It's all Jesus. It's not me. I'm just a vessel. I'm just willing to open my mouth or willing to lay my hands on a sick person. That I'm willing to do, but I can't claim any divine quality about myself like William Branham and others. Even though, now I'm going to stop right there. Just suffice it to say I'm no better than anybody else. We're talking about William Branham. One thing about William Branham that's an absolute certainty is William was not a money preacher. And I do believe that William was sincere. But even though a person is sincere, that doesn't mean that they can't be deluded or deceived. And I believe William may have actually heard voices or what have you, but William wasn't hearing the voice of God. And that's proven by the many false prophecies he uttered. William is guilty of telling the entire church that the rapture of the church would occur in 1977. It never happened. Okay? And there's, of course, other controversies surrounding his ministry. There was a congressman by the name of William D. Upshaw who was allegedly healed of his body was messed up because of an accident he had as a young man. For 59 years, this man allegedly was basically bedridden, and yet the pictures are online. The pictures don't lie. There he was up and walking around when he was in his 20s and 30s and 40s. And he was known as a Christian, though many believe he was involved with the Ku Klux Klan. I do believe that as well. But anyhow, this man claimed that he was healed of these injuries in a William Branham meeting. I believe it was in 49, and by 52, this congressman was dead. But he supposedly sent a letter to every member of Congress talking about how he was healed by William Branham. Also, William Branham is implicated in the this situation with the Ku Klux Klan because he was endorsed and was friends with Roy E. Davis, who was, I believe at the time, the head of the Ku Klux Klan. And Davis was also a friend of the congressman, William D. Upshaw. So there's a lot of things that are funny about that story. If the man was bedridden until he was 84 years of age, how is it that we have pictures of him standing with crutches, but he doesn't appear to be having any trouble standing? And it's a little side note here. Even his colleagues in Congress felt that his crutches were more or less a prop, that he really didn't need them to get around. Now, this is what his colleagues in Congress said. I'm not saying it. I'm repeating what they said. So these are the controversies, and that's just the tip of the iceberg that surrounded the ministry of William Branham. And William Branham, like I said, he was no different than any of the preachers we're more familiar with. Benny Hinn today, in his day, Oral Roberts and others. I think it said that the healing revival began to wane somewhere around 1949. No, I'm sorry, not 1949, in the 50s, but there were at the time 49 separate divine healing ministers that had all come to prominence, and of course all were clamoring for, the same slice of pie, if you will. And it just began not to work out. A lot of these ministers were funded by churches, and the churches just weren't able to support it. The donations were no longer there. And so if God was really in it, why would it wane? Why would it change? And of course, William had prophesied that he would become involved in a renewed tent ministry. Well, there's another false prophecy, because William was killed in a car accident in 1965 at the age of 56. And he died on Christmas Eve of 1965. And apparently, false prophet Kenneth Hagin had prophesied his untimely demise because he had gotten into error and eventually was punished for that, apparently, according to Hagin. Now, whether or not that's true, once again, we have no proof. It's all personal anecdotes, and we have no way of proving them. So I don't know why why people continue to follow people like this, but they do. And I only have a 15-minute broadcast these days. I stopped the other program. It wasn't worth it to me for the money, so I now do a free program, and I only have 15 million. I wish I had 15 million. I only have 15 minutes in which to get my message across to everybody, and so it's sort of condensed, and I'm not able to get into everything I would like to get involved in. But suffice it to say, most of what I'm telling you can find online. You don't need me to tell you. But I want you to know about this, because many people hail William Branham as a great prophet of God. Now, a prophet he was not. I will say that it appears that William was sincere. He wasn't a money preacher, but he was involved in all sorts of error, doctrinally speaking. I mean, he was into annihilationism, which we all know is not what the Bible teaches. The Bible teaches an eternity in heaven or hell. He believed that you went to hell, you were eventually annihilated. He didn't have the same beliefs about the Trinity. He believed it was something different than what we as Christians teach. So I would caution you, there's no real need to be involved with William Branham's teachings. And that's going to really do it. I hope you get something out of this message, and I encourage you to further research this online, and then you can pass what you've learned on to other people. And before I leave, the website for the program is DeceptionWatchMinistriesInternational.com. DeceptionWatchMinistriesInternational.com. I have posts put up there right now that you can avail yourselves of, and I believe that you will find them to be a blessing, and I hope you will go to the website. And of course, my YouTube channel, if you like what you've heard here today, like and subscribe. I would greatly appreciate your efforts in that area. And tell somebody about the program. If you like what you hear and you believe that I'm on the side of truth, then tell somebody and try to get people to listen to the program. And I would greatly appreciate anything you could do in that area, because it just furthers the message that I'm teaching here. And that's going to do it for today. And as always, I leave you all with this reminder to keep the faith and to defend the truth. Have a good day, everybody.
The trumpet in Zion, Zion, sound the alarm on the holy mountain. Blow the trumpet in Zion.